Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and it's time for another Conversations with Marty Ross MD. Let me get my camera slipped up there a little bit. Anyhow, this is another one of our Conversations with Marty Ross MD, and this is a webinar where you get to ask any question you want about Lyme disease. Our webinars are never the same, of course, because they're determined by the questions that you ask. And so sometimes we get a theme of questions, sometimes we don't. The way that you can write questions to me is over on the right-hand side of your screen. There's a chat box. Go ahead and write your questions there. I usually have time to take about one question per person. Sometimes I'll take two, but it's not that often. I would ask you when you do write your questions that you do not hit enter. I think many of you have seen that on my message there, but please don't hit enter. When you do that, or don't hit enter until you're done with your question. Just don't hit enter in the middle of writing it, because when you do, it creates a couple questions and it makes it hard for me to find the different ends of your question on my screen, okay? For those of you that are here for the first time, welcome here. I'm glad to see some new faces. I can tell who's in the room, and I do see many familiar faces as well too. Tomorrow morning, just so you know, I will send an email to all of you with a link for the recording. So yes, I am doing a recording of tonight's webinar, and if everything goes as planned, I will be sending that to you tomorrow morning, okay? And the other thing I want to let you know, well, actually, that'll come tomorrow. I think the next webinar, we won't be doing one next week. I believe I'm going to be taking a week off. But in the email that comes to you tomorrow, I will have a sign-up form so you can sign up for the next series of webinars when they begin after the week off, okay? And so with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our first question. Just so you know, I do post the questions on the screen so everyone can see. When you are looking at the recorded version of this tomorrow, though, they don't show up. The way that this webinar tool works, unfortunately, is the questions don't show, but they do show when you look at when you are participating in the live webinar. So let's go ahead and take the first question. So this first question is from Brenda. Hello, Brenda. Let's see, thanks you once again, Dr. Ross. I have Lyme and Bart. I am on amoxicillin, probenecid, and Biaxin. Having a hard time with constipation and forming a normal stool. Magnesium in all forms gives me a migraine. What can I take on a regular basis for relief? Thanks. Okay, so sorry to hear about that, Brenda. It's interesting is because magnesium often is one of those things I'll recommend for people that have headaches because it often can be helpful. But there's a rule of thumb I have in managing this illness and actually in managing most illnesses, and that is anything can happen to anyone with anything, okay? Which means that, you know, there are common reactions that happen with medicines and there's uncommon ones, and it looks like you're having one of those uncommon ones, okay? So regarding constipation, just a few basic things. Number one, make sure you're taking plenty of water. And the reason is you put more water into your intestines, you put more water into your pipes, if you will, there's a greater chance that you're going to have regular bowel movements. And so a good amount of water to have for both having bowel movements and also promoting detoxification, actually, is to have your ideal body weight. So the kind of weight you wish you had, or many of you may have, your ideal body weight in pounds, divide that by 2, and that's the number of ounces of water you should drink in a day. So for instance, a 150-pound person divided by 2 is 75. That means they need 75 ounces of water a day, okay? That's a lot of water, but that amount of water helps with detox and also does help in terms of constipation, okay? So that's the first thing. Number 2, you can use vitamin C actually at high doses to help promote good bowel movements. And high doses usually means somewhere around 6,000 to 10,000 milligrams a day. Usually vitamin C, as most of you know, is sold in 1,000 milligrams pills. So that means you're going to be taking quite a bit of vitamin C. If you do vitamin C, make sure you're using a buffered variety because vitamin C itself is very acidic. And when you get it buffered, they tend to make it so it's more alkaline, so it's not going to bother your stomach as much, okay? Now, if that doesn't work, the other thing you can do is increased fiber. So fiber would be things like beans and legumes. That has a lot of fiber in it, okay? Whole grains like brown rice. White rice is not a whole grain. Brown rice is a whole grain, okay? So that's one way to do it. And then if you can't do it that way, there is over-the-counter, you can get a pharmaceutical, which is called, boy, I'm going to blank on it now. I've just blanked on it. I'll try to remember it. If it comes back to me later, I'll tell you. Miralax. It's called Miralax. So Miralax is made by the pharmacy industry. It's basically a bunch of plastic particles. Not that I advocate people take plastic, but if you need it periodically, what these little particles do is they help hold water in your intestines. Wherever there's particles in our body, water is drawn into that area. And so Miralax, 1 scoop, 1 time a day, works pretty much for most people. It's not absorbed. I wish you didn't have to take plastic to get bowel movements, but these are particles of plastic, and they can get you having a good bowel movement. Okay? All right, Brenda. Good luck to you. Thank you for that question. All right. Hello, Marilyn. Let's see. Hi, Marty. Is it okay to start the MTHFR 5 protocol while waiting results of the testing for this gene mutation? Also, do you recommend taking a collagen supplement? Thank you so much for your webinar and protocol. Well, you're welcome for that. So, Marilyn, I guess let me break your question down into a few parts. So a collagen supplement, one of the reasons that people worry about collagen is a connective tissue. It's what holds things together, okay? And Lyme releases enzymes that allow it to burrow deep into tissue. And so sometimes it will destroy collagen, which makes it so that your skin may get wrinkled more easily, okay? Or your lips may not puff up quite the way that they used to. And so one of the things you can take is a supplement called hyaluronic acid, hyaluronic, HYALURONIC acid, okay? I actually don't have the dosing off the top of my head here, but hyaluronic acid is used as something that helps make collagen, okay? So that would be one thing you could try for that. In terms of MTHFR, for those of you that don't know what MTHFR is, I have a whole article written about it in our Treat Lyme book, and I'll show you that here in a second. But basically, there is an enzyme called methyltetrahydrofolate reductase, also known as MTHFR, that is responsible for taking folate that we get in our diet and activating it into a type of folate called 5-MTHF or 5-methyltetrahydrofolate, okay? Now you need to be able to take diet folate and convert it into this activated folate to help with a lot of detoxification processes in the body. So to help you understand that, there's an end product in this cycle that produces detoxification called glutathione, okay? Glutathione is down here. It's a downstream product. Many steps above, that's where we take diet folate and convert it into activated folate. And then there's a bunch of chemical reactions that work their way down to the creation of glutathione, which is down here, all right? These are minor detox reactions. They clear various toxins out. But most of the detoxification of the body is done using glutathione in the liver. Glutathione is our master detox chemical used by the liver, okay? But to get this down here, you need to be able to take diet folate and activate it, all right? Now, you can give glutathione. In fact, there is a supplement, an oral form of glutathione that you can use to make up for glutathione problems if you're not making enough. But that doesn't fix all these minor reactions. What helps with these minor reactions is being able to take diet folate up here and activate it, okay? So the people that we tend to think of as having methyltetra or an MTHFR defect, detoxification defect, are people that frequently react to many different medicines, okay? That's a clue that somebody might have the MTHFR problem. And so it is one of those detoxification problems that people can have. Marilyn, I have no problem with people starting the treatment while they're waiting for the results to come back. If you're to do that, though, you want to make sure you're using the activated folate coupled with a methylated form of vitamin B12. The supplement that I like to use for that has both the MTHF in it, that's the activated folate, along with the methylated B12, is something called MethylGuard. It's made by a company called Thorne. It's got both the methylated B12 in it, and it also has the 5-MTHF in it. Why do I like Thorne? Well, Thorne uses ingredients that are actually active. There's a lot of supplement companies out there that say what they put something on their label. When you go in and test independently, and this has been done many times, companies have gone and pulled supplements off the shelf, the supplement store, to see if the active ingredient really was worthwhile that was published on that label. And most of the time it's not. There are a handful of brands or a limited number of companies that actually do use high quality ingredients. We have chosen those for our supplement store, the ones that we use for our patients. I'll show you where that is later tonight. But anyhow, Thorne products happen to be one of those. Okay, so it'd be the Thorne MethylGuard product. All right. All right, so I want to do a quick screen share here, everyone, to show you one of our some of the information that we have, and I'm going to do that by showing you our Treat Lyme book. All right, so let's see here. All right, so we're in. I think we're in. Let me see if I got this right. So we're in the Treat Lyme book now. Okay, so this is the Treat Lyme book. And so this right over here is Treat Lyme book. You can find this at treatlyme.net. And I'm going to just do the table of contents to get around. There is a chapter we have called Detoxification. That's where I am right now. All right. And in here we talk about basics of detoxification. Okay. So there are certain steps everyone should take during their treatment to help with detoxification. Read this article. We outline what those are. Okay. Or I outline what those are. Remember I talked about glutathione? There's a whole article we have on glutathione here. And then finally about the MTHFR, here's the article that you can look at on MTHFR. I give a very detailed explanation here again. I've even made a video for that before too, okay? So now everyone, the one thing that I do want to let you know about the Treat Lyme book is most of the questions you have about Lyme disease that you may try to ask me here tonight, you'll probably find something about it in the Treat Lyme book. It's a pretty comprehensive treatment guide. It is available online only. We haven't come up with a published version of that, although I do think about doing that at times. But it is available by subscription. If you have not subscribed for it yet, basically, when you click on an article that you might want to read, you'll be asked to subscribe, all right? And to figure out if that book is right for you later on after the webinar tonight, go ahead and click on the table of contents. You'll see the chapters that we offer, and there's many good articles in there that can help you find ways through the treatment yourself. There's good ideas for you to enact on your own, or ideas that you can even bring to your physician in case they're not thinking of everything here too, okay? All right, so let me go ahead and move on. Marilyn, thank you for that question. Here we go. Let me see here, everyone. I gotta look at one thing. Okay. So let's see, Robin. Yes, we're still on. All right. So we've got a question from Crystal here. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks for taking my question. What is your take on treatment for Lyme with essential oils, CBD oil, or colloidal silver? So, hold on here just a minute. I gotta try to adjust my chair, everyone. There we go. So in terms of, essential oils, everyone, would be things like rosemary oil, thyme oil, clove oil. There's many other kinds of essential oils, but oils, those are essential oils, and they can kill germs. Every year in Lyme, or every 6 months, or maybe every 9 months, there is what I call the IT treatment of the season. Okay, the thing that suddenly a lot of people with Lyme are trying. And that's the one that gets a lot of focus. So probably about 6 months, 9 months ago, the it treatment of the season were the essential oils. All right. There's a company that's done a very good job of marketing itself. It has kind of a pyramid scheme marketing called doTERRA oils. And they seem to have enlivened their sales force to go out and promote the use of essential oils for treating Lyme. Now, I do think they help some people. I don't think we know the ideal way to use them, but I don't think that they are the cure-all, nor do I think they're going to help the majority of people. I think they may help maybe about 30 or 40% of the time. I don't think they're going to get rid of Lyme, but it is something that you can do on your own, okay? So what is my take on it? I think you're going to do better with some of the ideas that we discussed, like using prescription antibiotics or using some of the herbs that I recommend, like the Banderol cemento, which is otoba bark extract, for instance, and cat's claw to treat Lyme. Or using some herbal protocols for Babesia or Bartonella. I think you're going to do better with the herbs than you will the essential oils, but it's something to try. I don't think you're going to hurt yourself doing that, okay? All right, CBD oil. What is CBD oil? Well, CBD oil is an oil that comes from the marijuana plant, also comes from hemp. And in terms of the marijuana plant, it comes from the green part of the plant. It doesn't come from the bud, all right? The bud would be the part you smoke or you put into your edibles, like your brownies, for instance, okay? The bud is rich in a chemical called THC. The rest of the plant has CBD oil, all right? Now, even when you use CBD oil, there still is a little bit of the THC. THC is what gives you the high, and in some people may give a little bit better medicinal variety too. What can CBD help with? Well, CBD can help with tremors. It can help with body pain. It can help with nausea. It can help put people to sleep, okay? It can help with a lot of the symptoms of Lyme. There is the possibility as an oil that it might kill the Lyme germs too. I know, for instance, Dr. Ernie Murakami, who many of our Canadian participants know his name, is a big advocate in Canada for using it to even treat Lyme and kill Lyme, that is. I'm not quite sure it works that well as a germ killer, okay? But I do think it works well for symptom management. Now, one thing I'll suggest to let you know about CBD, and that is that the one thing that medicinal marijuana, whether it's THC or CBD does, is it can impair your thinking, okay? And so there's one drawback to using it, and that is that you can get impaired thinking. But I do think for many people, it can really be beneficial in terms of that pain control, nausea, and helping manage a lot of the effects that Lyme has, okay? Now, where do you get it? Well, if you happen to be in a state that has a medicinal marijuana law, like we do here in Washington State, you can get it through your marijuana dispensaries, like in Oregon, for instance, here in Washington State, okay? But most parts of the country don't have those dispensaries, all right? So another place you can get it is online in Amazon, but I got to tell you, they're deriving it from hemp. And it is, the quality may not be as good. The concentration may not be quite what you ought to be using, okay? So usually if you are in a state where you can get it through one of your medicinal marijuana dispensaries, it's probably a better way of going to do it, all right? Finally, colloidal silver. So colloidal silver can help kill any germ. But do I find it to be useful in Lyme? Maybe about 40%, 30%, 40% of the time, just like essential oils are, okay? So of all the things you've mentioned here, the only one I think really has good benefit, and that's more for symptom benefit, is CBD. I think in terms of germ killers, I wouldn't say CBD is the greatest, and I don't think essential oils are the greatest, and I don't think colloidal silver is the greatest, all right? I hope that answers your question. Thanks for that question, Crystal. Oh, one more thing about medicinal marijuana, I have to tell you. Part of the problem about marijuana, we don't have a lot of good research because here in the United States, our federal government has blocked the ability to do research. So there is a lot that we don't know about this medicine, but I hope that's going to change in time because I think we see some good benefits, at least what I see in working with it with my patients here at the Healing Arts Partnership in Seattle, Washington. All right. So again, thank you, Crystal. Oh, let's see here. All right. Hello, Sue. Let's see. Our daughter has had a year of Lyme and Babesia treatment with heavy antibiotics. After feeling great for a month, the drugs gave her a huge negative reaction, vomiting, diarrhea, flu-like aching, but it wasn't flu. Is this a toxic overload? And does it... Okay, so there's a second part to the question that Sue wrote. She says, does it mean it's time to stop and go on maintenance? What should maintenance look like? Okay, I need to quickly flip back here again, Sue. See, our daughter has had a year of Lyme and Babesia treatment and 5 months of Bartonella treatment with heavy antibiotics. After feeling great for a month, the drugs gave her a huge negative reaction. Okay. So, Sue, there's a lot I would like to know, but by talking with you one-on-one, but obviously we can't do that. But let me just give you a few brief comments. I can't tell from your question whether she still is actually on Babesia treatment, coupled with Bartonella, coupled with Lyme. The only observation I would make about that is when you are treating 3 germs, you do start getting into some interaction potential by being on all of those antimicrobials at the same time. Now, having said that, I will do that at times. I will sometimes treat for all 3 germs at the same time. But one of the big things I see that explains a marked decline when somebody has been doing better is that you can develop too many yeast living in the intestines. Now, that may sound far-fetched, but just hear me out on this, okay? So when somebody, and I want to come back to why I'm saying yeast, but I'm going to go roundabout here. Just follow me on this for a minute, all right? So when you have Lyme disease, one of the reasons, or the main reason you feel poorly, is that the immune system, in trying to get rid of the germs, overproduces a group of chemicals called cytokines. And for many of you that listen in on my webinars regularly, you know that I think Lyme disease, when we say somebody has Lyme symptoms, what they really have are symptoms of excess cytokines. In fact, we could say that Lyme disease is a syndrome of excess cytokines. So what are cytokines? And this is quick, okay? Cytokines are made by white blood cells when they see a germ. And they're good and they're bad. On the good side, they cause more white blood cells to be made. They draw the white blood cells where the infection is, and they help those white blood cells work better. Okay, that's all good. But in Lyme, too many cytokines get made because the immune system does a rotten job getting rid of the germ. It keeps trying harder and harder, and eventually it makes too many cytokines. Well, what does too many cytokines give you? Well, they make it so you can't think. They disturb how your hormone systems work. They disturb your sleep centers. They make you hurt. They give you pain. They give you numbness. I could go down the whole list of what we call Lyme disease symptoms, and the majority of those have a component of excess cytokines, okay? So how does yeast come into play here then? Well, when you get too many yeast living in your intestines, they also trigger more cytokines, and they release toxins. And those increased cytokines and toxins can make it look like your Lyme got worse, okay? But in fact, it just means you've got another source producing all of those increased cytokines. So why would you get yeast in your intestines? Well, when you're on antibiotics, even if you're doing the great things that I recommend to prevent yeast from happening, you can still get too many yeast in your intestines. So your yeast are made up of both bacteria and, your intestines are made up of yeast and bacteria. And when you're on antibiotics, there's a great chance that you can cause those yeast, the bacteria to get knocked down. That keeps yeast under control. And then they will grow too much, and they will trigger cytokines, and they will release toxins that make you feel bad, okay? Now, yeast can sometimes give you nausea, and yeast can sometimes make it so you throw up. So one of the things I would consider, Sue, for your daughter is that you look in to see if she might have too many yeast. And symptoms that make you think of too many yeast can be sugar cravings, increased intestinal gasiness or bloating, vaginal itching, vaginal discharge, difficulty swallowing, may sometimes feel like you get food caught in your air pipe, or your food pipe that is, white patches in the mouth. And sometimes people will have worsened skin problems. So eczema might get worse, acne can even get worse, okay? And sometimes, even if I can't find another reason for the decline, I still treat for yeast, okay? The other thing you should do, if she's having nausea and vomiting, you might want to check to make sure her kidney and liver are doing okay. Sometimes those antibiotics that she's been on can hurt kidney or liver function, which would give some of that throwing up as well too, all right? So let me just show you an article. I'm going to do a quick screen share here, everyone. All right, so I'm going to go back to the Treat Lyme book here. All right, so here we are back in the Treat Lyme book. Okay, so I'm looking here again at the table of contents, okay, that you can reach by clicking over here on the left-hand side. All right, and there is an article that we have, a whole chapter we have devoted to yeast. Okay, all right, so this is the yeast chapter. Down here is a whole article that you can use to figure out, do you have too many yeast? Okay. And I talk about in this article about the steps you can take to figure out if it's yeast at the beginning of treatment and what to do in the middle of treatment too. All right. And then there's a whole article I have about what do you do if you have yeast? Okay. So you want to review this. There's some prescription and herbal options as well too. Lufeneron that I have here, unfortunately, is no longer available, and I keep waiting for a source to come back. So this article I need to remove. This weekend, I plan on getting some attention back to the book here. And here we talk about the main probiotic that we like that helps prevent yeast as well too, okay? So the one thing I want to let you know about yeast is you need to work to prevent them too. And there's a whole article here about the steps you should take to prevent yeast, okay? So during your treatment, you need to work to prevent yeast. And this article, if you're wondering what you can do to kill yeast, is down here. So take a look at this chapter. There's many useful articles. I'm not going to take time to go into them right now, but there's useful articles I think that every one of you will find in terms of helping manage yeast, treat yeast, prevent yeast, etc. Okay? All right, let me go back here. All right, so Sue, thank you for that question. And take a look at the articles. I think you'll find some useful ideas for your daughter as well too. And I wish her well. All right, so let me go back here. Let's see. All right, so there's Kristen has written a number of questions that I think I'm going to consolidate down to one here. Kristen, I'm working to it. Just a minute. All right, so this is Kristen's main question. Do you feel a positive 41-34 on a Western blot with symptoms of Lyme is enough to diagnose Lyme? Okay. And everyone, Chris, I just want you to know it's Lyme. It's not Lyme's. I know that some people say Lyme's, but it's Lyme disease, not Lyme's disease. Okay, it doesn't have an S on it, although some people say it that way. That's not the correct way of doing it. All right. I'm not trying to make you wrong either. I just want to let you know that it's called Lyme disease. All right, so everyone, so when we look at a Western blot, many of you may know that we do this test called a Western blot to figure out if somebody has Lyme disease. And what a Western blot is, it's a method that we use to see if your immune system makes antibodies that attach to very specific proteins that are found in the covering of the Lyme germ, okay? And so what an antibody is, you can kind of think of it as a big, it's a big like radio tower that attaches to certain parts of the germ. And once it's attached, it sends out a bunch of signals to the cells of the immune system to come in and gobble up that germ. Now, it doesn't attach to the whole germ. It actually attaches to proteins, all right? So when we do a Western blot, there's actually 6 proteins that I like to focus on. And these are proteins that if you have antibodies against them, there's a good chance they were actually made against Lyme. And the reason we focus on these 6 is we'll make sure that when an antibody is stuck on a Lyme protein, that it really was made against Lyme, that it doesn't happen to be made against a cold infection, for instance, okay? And the ones that attach to these 6 proteins, I'm going to tell you what they are here in a second. The ones that are attached to these 6 proteins, it'd be very rare that they would happen to be made against a virus, okay? All right, so the 6 proteins are identified by what they weigh. And there's one that weighs 23 to 25 kilodaltons. That's the 23-25 band. There's another one that weighs 34 kilodaltons, one that weighs 31 kilodaltons, 39 kilodaltons, 41 kilodaltons, and 83 to 93 kilodaltons. Okay, so the 6 proteins are 23, 25, 31, 34, 39, 41, and 8393. Okay. And what we're looking for is we say a test is positive if you have antibodies against at least 2 of those 6 proteins. And so, yeah, you've got antibodies against 2 of those 6 proteins. Okay, so you have a positive test. Okay, now how do we diagnose Lyme though? We don't just look at a test. Tests can be wrong. You can have false positive results. So there's 4 things we consider in deciding if somebody has Lyme. One is, do you have risk of getting it? Okay, so for instance, somebody that gets a tick bite in New Jersey where about 95 to 100% of the ticks are shown to carry Lyme, that's high risk. Okay, if you're a deer hunter anywhere in the country, that's high risk. If you do a lot of hiking in Northern California where 30 to 40% of the ticks carry Lyme, that's high risk. So we look to see, do you have risk? Okay, now you don't even have to have high risk, but we consider it. Okay, second thing we consider is, do you have symptoms that fit with Lyme? Third thing we consider is, do you have any physical exam findings? And often people don't have many. Fourth thing we consider is there supportive testing? Okay, so if you have a lot of symptoms of Lyme, you got risk, which I can't tell by looking at your question. This is a positive test. I'd say, yeah, there's a good probability you have Lyme. All right. Now I'm going to give you, there's a more detailed article that I have written to help figure out if you have Lyme disease. And I'm going to do a quick screen share to show that to you. All right, so I'm going back to the Treat Lyme book here. I think I'm going back to the Treat Lyme book. Yeah, okay. So we're back in the Treat Lyme book here. I'm going to hit the table of contents again. All right, there's a whole chapter we have on how to diagnose, all right? And in here, I have written articles about how to diagnose just about anything you might want to in Lyme. So there's the article on how to diagnose yeast. There's another one to see if you might have chronic virus infections that are part of your illness, okay? But the big article here is the one called How to Diagnose Chronic Lyme Disease More Than a Test, okay? So it's not just the test that matters, all right? And so this is actually a 15-minute video from a webinar that I did. So actually one of the first webinars that I did, I believe back in late 2010 or early 2011 is when this is from. It's still very current, okay? But it looks in more detail at what I just described, including a whole discussion about what the symptoms of Lyme are. And it has a much better discussion about what constitutes a high risk factor for having Lyme, okay? All right, so take a look at that later, everyone. Again, I think it gives you much more detail than what I just explained, okay? All right, so there you go. Thank you for that question. All right, bear with me here, everyone. Okay, let's see here. Next question. Let's see. I'm going to clear out. I have a person here who started to write the question twice, and I'm just trying to clear that. Let me get rid of that. Somebody asking if the webinar started. That's the second part of another question. I'm just cleaning out stuff so I can get to the main show here. Okay, here we go. Hello, Lori. Let's see. My daughter has a positive SCL 70 greater than 8, but also has positive IgM Quest Lab Lyme test, positive 41, and an IgG positive 41. Also positive for Babesia coni, IgG greater than 1 to 256. How can I determine an accurate diagnosis? Rheumatologists think Lyme test is false positive. Thank you. So, Lori, so take a look. First of all, start by looking at that whole video article that I have on how to diagnose Lyme. Okay, and then if you need help teasing this out, I would be glad to help consider that with you. This gets to be complicated, probably more complicated than I can do here in this webinar. But there is a way that you can consult with me over the internet. I'm going to show that to you here in a second. It's a program we have called a one-to-one medical consult service where I can visit with people over the internet. I can design treatment approaches for you. However, if it requires prescriptions, I can't prescribe. And if it requires testing, I can't write the test order. But often the things I recommend, you might be able to find a physician locally that if it requires a prescription, requires testing, you can find them to help do that for you, okay? But it's a good way of looking at some questions that people have. I can give input to your physician. I can give input to you. A lot of the stuff that we do in this illness, we can do herbally or with natural medicines and don't need prescriptions anyhow, all right? So that's called our one-to-one medical consult service. So I'm going to show you that in a second. But let me make a bigger, let me discuss one more thing. So another way to look at it is Lyme disease can actually cause rheumatology problems, okay? And that positive SCL that you have could actually be due to Lyme triggering it, okay? Lyme can even cause the production of anti-nuclear antibodies called an ANA, or Lyme can trigger the production of rheumatoid factor, okay? So people with rheumatoid arthritis or lupus arthritis or other kinds of inflammatory arthritises may in fact have Lyme disease giving those problems, or they may have two separate problems. They could have Lyme and rheumatoid arthritis, okay? So those are just some observations, but if you'd like my input about how to look at this with more detail, I'd be glad to do that. By the way, the Babesia decani, having antibodies against that, that's one of the co-infections, another germ that can be transmitted in Lyme. We call those the co-infections. So for those of you that are new to this, not only can you get the Lyme infection from a tick bite, but that tick bite can also spread other germs. We call those co-infections, okay? If you happen to have a positive Lyme test, as you do, and then also have one of the co-infections, that just strengthens the case that, yep, you probably really have Lyme and it's not a false test, okay? So let me show you, if you would like more direct input, that I can help you look at this in more detail. Again, I've got a service called a one-to-one medical consult service. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to find that service here. All right, so here we are. So I'm back in the Treat Lyme book. Okay, and I'm back in our main website. All right, so this is the Treat Lyme and Associated Diseases, of which the majority of the site is our Treat Lyme book right here. Okay, but down here on the left side navigation menu, you're going to see this thing called Online Consult. Click on that. It describes in some detail this one-to-one medical consult service that I run. And if you want to sign up or you have questions, you can either fill out this form, or you can call Christine at 800-470-7217, all right? Down here, I describe how it works, all right? And then there's a whole disclaimer you have to sign, because it says basically, be aware I'm not examining you, so that some of what I may say may be limited by that, but I gotta let you know, there's a lot we can do. And it's just, the only reason I can't prescribe is that my medical board will not, my licensing body, will not let me prescribe without first seeing somebody in person, okay? All right, so there you go. Lori, if I can help you, I'd look forward to helping you if you want to set one of those up, okay? All right. And good luck with your daughter too. All right, let's see. Hold on here a minute, Jenny. I gotta just take a quick sip of water here. Let's see. Good evening. One of my symptoms has been red and purple bruises the size of a $50 on my lower legs. I get one about every month. The first time I was sent by my PCP for leg ultrasound, but no deep vein thrombosis. Do you ever see this with Lyme and co-infections? Any solution? You know, I haven't actually seen that. I will let you know Lyme can trigger a lot of different rashes. I haven't seen the co-infections necessarily cause a rash like that. The other thing I would point out is that if you have too many yeast in your intestines, you can get rashes too. What might be a good idea, rather than actually getting the ultrasound that you had done, and I understand why they might have done that, is sometimes it's difficult to figure out what a rash is based on what it looks like, okay? And if you want to get a firm diagnosis, we need to have a dermatologist, or sometimes family docs will do it too. I'm a family physician by training, and I used to do these in my office, and that is to do a skin biopsy. You can use an instrument called a punch biopsy. makes a really small removal, a small section of skin. We can send that over to the laboratory, and then we get a more accurate diagnosis of what that rash is being caused by. All right, so keep in mind that when you have Lyme, everything that happens to you is not necessarily due to Lyme. People with Lyme also get other medical conditions, and so that rash, if it's not falling into a typical pattern of what we might see in Lyme, don't necessarily assume it's Lyme. Probably get a skin biopsy to figure it out if no one has an idea. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. All right. Let's see here. Hello, Sharon. Let's see. Thank you, Dr. Ross, for all of your help. I have Lyme and Barton Babesia. I recently tested high for metals of lead, mercury, barium, and antimony. I can never say that one right. My LLMD compounded DMSA, and I think there's a second part to your question here, Sharon. Let me find it. Rats. The second part of your question is not going to allow me to post it, but let me read it, okay? So it's so my LLMD compounded DMSA. I plan on having the mercury removed from my mouth. Until then, what should I do? I'm treating Lyme and Bartonella with Stephen Buhner and Byron Cowden, the Byron protocol, or with Stephen Buhner's herbs. I think you mean Byron white herbs and the Cowden protocol. I believe that's what you mean by there. Okay, so I'm gonna confine my comments to what to do about heavy metals and should you do anything about heavy metals. All right, so let's talk about what heavy metals are first. So heavy metals are lead, mercury, aluminum sometimes can be part of that too. There's a variety of metals that we can get into us. And so what's the problem with heavy metals? Well, when you get too many heavy metals in you, they go inside of our cells and they attach inside of cells where we have a lot of sulfur, okay? So how we get exposed to heavy metals is we either eat them in, drink them in, or breathe them in. In the case of mercury fillings that you have in your mouth, as they get older, as we chew on them, there's a little bit of off-gassing that occurs above the filling, and then we swallow that. It gets either breathed in or we swallow it in so it can get absorbed. Other ways of getting mercury is when, if anyone out there is as old as I am, I'm 53. If you're at my age, you know, when we grew up, we had thermometers that would break and we'd play with them. Well, you get a mercury absorbed through the skin. When I grew up, there was lead paint and there was leaded gas. And so if you stood by your car filling it up with gasoline, you could breathe in lead. That would be a way of getting lead. Or if you grew up in an older home, you might get your lead that way. If you live downstream, down airstream from a metal smelter, like we have out here in Puget Sound, down in Tacoma, there would have been a lot of arsenic that got released into the air, and people might have breathed that in. It can be found in the ground soil out here too, okay? So we can get exposed to heavy metals. Now what happens is when we breathe them in, eat them in, drink them in, they get into the bloodstream, and the majority of them actually get peed out. They're not a problem, all right? But some of them get absorbed into the cells. And inside of the cells, they like to bind where we have sulfur. And what's rich in sulfur in our cells are the areas of the cells that generate energy called mitochondria, okay? And so what happens is the mitochondria have enzymes that are needed as part of the chemical producing reactions in a mitochondria. And those enzymes all have a lot of sulfur. And what happens then is those enzymes, the heavy metals attach to those enzymes, and it makes it so the cells have a hard time generating energy then, okay? So our cells have a hard time healing. The immune system that needs energy has a hard time working. Our nerve cells that need energy have a hard time working. We have a hard time working because we need energy, all right? So when it comes to heavy metals, you need to, the way you figure out if you might have too many heavy metals is we're concerned about what's in your cells. And one thing I want to let you know is what's in the cells, once it's there, has an elimination half-life of about 23 to 24 years, meaning half of what gets in you takes 23 to 24 years to come out, okay? So you don't need to have big exposures all at once. You can have a bunch of small exposures that over time build up to be the problem, all right? So when I look at heavy metals, though, I have learned over time that if somebody has medium elevations, small elevations, there really is no benefit in treating for those. It's when a person has a big elevations that it will treat for, okay? The other thing you should know is that when you test for heavy metals, I usually don't do a blood test or hair analysis. Hair analysis will give you an idea what you've been exposed to, maybe over a 2 or 3 month period of time. A blood analysis is just going to let you know what you've recently been exposed to. Urine analysis, where you actually have somebody take a chelation agent like DMSA, a metal magnet pill. If you take that metal magnet pill and then you collect urine for 6 hours, what happens is that metal magnet pill draws it out of your cells. You wind up getting into the bloodstream with your heavy metals, then you pee those out and you get an idea of how much you might have extra in your cells. Okay, that's the ideal way to collect them. Okay. All right, so let me see bear with me here. I got to see, I think I answered your question, but let's see. Oh, so should you deal with your heavy metals? Well, when I look at the heavy metal issue, I find it doesn't have a big bang for doing something about it. I usually will look at dealing with heavy metal issues if I have somebody that's maybe about 9 months, 6 to 9 months into treatment, they're not getting any better, then I might consider doing something for heavy metals, okay? But it is not one of the first things I go with, all right? So when somebody has Lyme disease, there's many things that can add together to give the illness, and it doesn't mean you need to fix every one of the problems. So what I like to do is work through things in a logical fashion by fixing the most important ones first, the things that give you the biggest bang for your dollar, if you will. And only at about 6 to 9 months, if things aren't improving, do I start looking into things like heavy metals, okay? Now, if you've got mercury in your mouth, do you need to remove it right away? No. You may be having some off-gassing from your mercury, but it's really, really a very small amount compared to probably what's already in you. So put your resources into something else. Don't clean out your mercury first. Put it into the supplements that you might need or the antibiotics you need, okay? Those are going to give you a bigger bang for the buck, okay? So I want to go back. I want to show you our treatment guideline, and I want to show you the steps we think are the most important things to do first and when you might start thinking about going after heavy metals if you're not doing better. I like to break this illness down into stages. You could chase 100 different things to get better in this illness, but there are some ones that I have found to be the most important. And that's what I built into the Lyme disease treatment protocol that we have, okay? So I'm going to do a quick screen share here, and I'm going to show you the Lyme disease treatment protocol. All right, so let's go there now. All right, so I'm back on our Lyme disease information site. I just happen to be sitting on the one-to-one medical consult service page, all right? But you can find our Lyme disease treatment guidelines by clicking on the Lyme guidelines page down here, okay? And so these are the steps that anyone should take in terms of treating their illness, okay? And this is not about how to diagnose. We've got all these other links up here about how do you diagnose Lyme, Babesia, Bartonella. How do you know if you're done? What are the steps you take at the end of treatment? You can click on all these links, okay? Now, our Lyme disease treatment guidelines is free. This is a free article, okay? You don't have to be a subscriber. But many of the things that we link to within the guideline, you do need to subscribe to be able to read them because they're parts of the Treat Lyme book, okay? So the successful treatment recipe is our Lyme disease treatment guideline. It's designed to boost your immune system, helps with recovery, kills your infections, and can protect and repair, all right? It basically fixes most of the problems, all right? So these are the essential things we think that you should do throughout your treatment. These are the most important steps. Number one, do things to get sleep. You want to get at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep to lower those cytokines that I discussed earlier, okay? But also helps you feel better, all right? And helps your immune system work better. We give you some ideas on what to do. If these basic ideas don't work, look at our article called Sleep, or my article called Sleep 101, The Basics. I give you a really comprehensive approach about what to do for sleep, okay? Number two, lower those cytokines. I talked about cytokines earlier, everyone. Again, these are the chemicals made by the immune system trying to turn itself on to fight Lyme, but the immune system does a rotten job and eventually makes too many cytokines. And again, as I explained earlier, too many cytokines give you most of the Lyme disease symptoms, Well, you want to lower those, okay? And what can lower them quite effectively is to use curcumin. Curcumin comes from the Ayurvedic East Indian seasoning turmeric. Take a 500 milligram pill 3 times a day, all right? So I have basically all my patients on curcumin. It's an essential herb that you should be on, okay? Number 3, help your body deal with stress. I like using the herb ashwagandha to do that. We'll talk about that here. Number 4, correct hormone problems. And don't believe your testing. It doesn't always pick up the hormone problems in Lyme, all right? I tell you here what to do to correct them, but down here in this section called symptoms, I talk about the symptoms that make you think about low adrenals or think about low thyroid. If you have enough of those, you probably have a low thyroid, low adrenal problem. You should correct in spite of what testing is telling you, okay? Number 5, be on a good multivitamin. Number 6, make sure you don't have too many yeast, and if you do, get rid of them because they trigger cytokines. I talked about that earlier tonight, okay? All right, and down here, if you're wondering if you have too many yeast, you can read our article. There's a whole article we have about how to diagnose yeast. Actually, I need to link that into here. But you can also click our yeast screening questionnaire. And on a screening test, if you score over 140, there's a good chance you might have yeast, okay? All right, number 7, treat your Lyme infection. And in here, I even described my 2 favorite herbs to do that work about 85–90% of the time. That's Otoba bark extract, cat's claw, also known as cemento and banderol. Okay. Number 8, make sure you're doing some detoxification steps. Talk about that here. Number 9, treat your co-infections. Number 11, get some exercise. Okay, down here, step 12, part 12, are the things you should do 6 to 9 months into treatment if all those other things aren't helping you, okay? This is the 12th step. And down here is a 12th step. We say consider doing heavy metal work, okay? It's something you do at 6 to 9 months into treatment. It is not right away, right? This section talks about the other things you do when you're not getting better, okay? All right, so anyhow, that's quite an extensive discussion there, but I just wanted to let you know, take a look at the guidelines. I think it'll give you some steps. It gives a stepwise approach. Focus on the essential parts first, okay? And make sure through your treatment, you're focusing continuously on those essential parts, all right? All right, thank you for that question. Boy, Sarah writes the big question. And actually, I'm going to bear with me here. For some reason, Sarah, it's not letting me post it. This is Sarah Kaufman, everyone. But let me copy it here. And let me get it reposted. I'm going to post it under my name. And let me go ahead and post that. And then I'm gonna make it so you all can see it, okay? All right, so it looks like the question's for me, but in fact, this is by Sarah. Let's see, what has been the most effective treatment for Lyme? I don't know. I mean, that's the $1 million question, all right? I think ultimately, everything that I outlined as part of the Treat Lyme, the successful recipe, are effective. You need to do every one of those steps. You need to correct your hormones. You need to get sleep. That whole treatment that I just put together there for you is the most effective thing for Lyme, all right? It is not just about poisoning your germs, all right? Now, is there a most effective antibiotic? No. Is there a most effective herb? Well, yeah, to treat Lyme, I think there are 2 herbs that are more outstanding than any of the other herbs. And those 2 herbs to kill the Lyme germ are the products banderol and cemento, also known as Otoba bark extract and cat's claw, okay? When you use those 2 herbs together, they work about 85 to 90% of the time. They work better than teasel, andrographis, sida acuta, kumanda, neem, any of those other things that you all, definitely a lot better than any of the Byron White formulas, okay? Those 2 herbs together, in my opinion, work about 85 to 90% of the time. I started working with those 2 herbs together after some Petri dish experiments got published about 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, that showed that they work individually really well against Lyme. But put the two together and you get a whopping kill of the Lyme germ. And more than that, you get a removal of about 100% of biofilms. Biofilms are a slime layer that covers the germ, okay? So what's the most effective treatment? Do the successful treatment recipe. Do the whole thing, okay? And if you want to treat your Lyme germs with prescription antibiotics, you can layer those in. Or if you want to use some herbs to kill it, you can layer those in, okay? Does it work better than the Cowden protocol? Yes. Does it work better than Biorite formulas? Yes, okay. Does it do better than Buhner herbs for most people? Yes, because what that successful treatment recipe is doing is dealing with all the things that you need to get your immune system working while you're trying to kill the germs, while you're trying to prevent yeast from happening, okay? So what's the best? Take a look at the successful treatment recipe. If you're wanting to know what's the best herb, Banderol Cemento, all right? Now I'm gonna show everyone just a few articles because we're not gonna have time to go into them tonight, but I'm just gonna show you these resources so you can look at them later. So I'm gonna do a screen share here again. All right, so I'm back here in our Lyme disease information site. I'm gonna go back over here to the Treat Lyme book, okay? All right, so if you're wondering how do you kill things, okay? So look in you can look in either our infection treatment plan section, or you can look at the anti-germs section, okay? I'm gonna look at the anti-germ section here. All right, many of you wonder what is the best way to kill Lyme? So there's an article that we have called Kills Lyme Germs, a somewhat brief antibiotic guide, okay? You'll see when I say somewhat brief, but look through here. What we talk about in terms of killing Lyme is to make sure you're doing the basic steps like the successful treatment recipe, okay? Circled it down here, okay? But on top of that, you want to use antibiotics, whether they're herbal or prescription, that when you combine them together, they will treat all three forms of the Lyme germ. So there's one thing I want everyone to understand. Lyme exists in you in three different forms. It lives as something called a spirochete, which is that corkscrew-looking thing that you can see on the internet. It also lives inside of cells called intracellular Lyme, and it lives as a microscopic cyst form, okay? You need to pick your germ killers to treat all three forms, all right? And then you need to, and so down here in this article, I talk about the various families of antibiotics and what they do. So for instance, the penicillins treat spirochete Lyme. And according to one experiment, they may treat the cyst. I wouldn't necessarily rely on them to do that, okay? The tetracyclines, like doxycycline, minocycline, they treat the spirochete and the L form. The L form is a kind of Lyme that lives inside of the cells, all right? So you can look through here. You can see the various ways that different antibiotics work. And then even in here, we talk about combination herbs, and that's the Otoba bark extract and the cat's claw, which treat all three forms of Lyme germ and actually work 85 to 90% of the time as effective treatment. In fact, these two herbs work as well as any prescription antibiotic combination that also works about 85 to 90% of the time, okay? Down here in the bottom, I go through examples of way you could put your medicines together to treat all three forms of the Lyme germ. And one of the samples that we have down here is the Otoba bark extract and cat's claw, okay? So anyhow, I'm gonna go back up here. So again, I've mentioned Otoba bark extract and cat's claw a number of times, okay? This is also sold as the product called Banderol and Cemento. But read through here, you're gonna see why I like this as a combination that works really well for most people, okay? All right, so the other thing I'm gonna just do a quick screen share about, I'm often asked, where should I get my supplements? How do I know that the supplements you recommend are great quality? Okay, so many of you know in our Treat Lyme book, I only write about generics, okay? And the reason I can only write about generics without a brand is that the Food and Drug Administration and the Federal Trade Commission has strict rules about mentioning what a medicine or an herb can do along with putting the brand of the product, all right? And essentially, unless you can show there's a lot of human studies that show that there's benefit from that herb, I cannot tell you what the brand of that herb is. So we're no longer able to do that. But if you want to know where we recommend you get herbs, try out our supplement store. What we've done here is we've taken the guesswork out of it for you. We've figured out what the good brands are out there that have the best chance of having a good active ingredient in them. And also these are brands that we use at our store that don't have artificial fillers in them that might hurt you, okay? So if you're trying to figure out if we have something you might want, you can look under here. We sort our supplements by medical problems, or you can look and see what do we consider the good manufacturers, okay? So for instance, there's a company called Allergy Research Group that we think makes good products that aren't going to hurt you, okay? All right, the easiest way to do things though is use the search function up here. So many of you know I've recommended curcumin tonight. So type in curcumin. All right, and you're going to see the curcumin products that we carry, all right? And our favorite is this one called Mariva 500, okay? And this is the main product that I recommend for people that are trying to lower their cytokines, okay? So take a look at our site. If you're interested on good quality products, this is where you're gonna find them. All right, so let me go back here. All right, thank you for that question, Sarah. But we got a lot of questions. We have a lot of visitors tonight too. I'm glad that many of you showed up here. All right. Hello, Tessa. Hi, Tessa. It's Marty. Marty Ross. You already know that. Let's see. CDC positive for Lyme in 2009. Also, IGeneX found Babesia and Mycoplasma. Treated on and off until 2013, at which time I went herbal. 2014 year was great, felt good on homeopathic drops. Recently diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and finding a lot of studies linking Lyme with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. All right, there should be a second part to your question here, Tessa. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, darn it, Tessa. I'm not finding a second part to your question here. Let me just try to do this real quick again. Bear with me here a minute. Okay, so there's your question. Tessa, I don't see where the last part of that got reproduced there. Yeah, Lyme, I have seen linkages to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but I don't know what else to say because I can't find the rest of your question. Maybe as we keep working through these, I might, okay? All right, good luck to you. Hello, John. Let's see, I've been getting many red tiny dots in my skin after being on the meds for about 9 months. Any idea what this is? Do you think it's okay to take a break from the antibiotics after being on them for so long, or no? Red tiny, so I would make sure that your doctor takes a look at the red tiny dots, okay? Sometimes they can be spots that we see when people get babesia. So sometimes people with babesia get a bunch of red spots. Sometimes they can be part of an allergic reaction. Sometimes they can be that you're getting the release of small blood clots into your skin, all right? And if so, then they need to figure out where the big source of that blood clot is. So I would make sure that you have your doctor take a look at it. They'll be able to tell by the nature of what those look like as to what it specifically is, okay? Now, to your second part of your question, can you take a break from antibiotics? Absolutely. But let me kind of define that a little bit more, all right? So the Lyme germ, everyone, by some estimates, regrows, makes new babies, repopulates itself, regenerates itself about every 4 weeks to every 8 months. Okay, so this is slow growing stuff. And because it's so slow growing, it's okay to stop the Lyme germ antibiotics for even 4 weeks to a month and not really go backwards at all, okay? Because the germ grows so slowly and replicates so slowly. If you stop the germ killers, your body is not going to be suddenly overwhelmed by the germ, all right? And so it's a common thing I'll do in my treatments. I'll have people take a break for even a month or two for the Lyme germ, all right? Bartonella and Babesia, those co-infections are a different animal altogether. Bartonella, there's studies that suggest it replicates about every 24 hours. An average length of time it takes to get over Bartonella, everyone, is about four months to 6 months, all right? So you do not want to stop your Bartonella treatment in the middle of it. You go back to the beginning again. Babesia, I haven't quite seen the studies that tell me how quickly it replicates, but it replicates pretty quickly because I know if I stop a Babesia treatment on somebody that's kind of been keeping a lid on it, but not enough, they'll have a resurgence in those Babesia symptoms really quickly, okay? So that one replicates fast too. Average length at a time that it takes to treat Babesia, about 5 months, okay? So those are two, if you're in the middle of using those, you do not want to stop them until you're over those, okay? Lyme, on the other hand, take a break periodically. There's no harm that's going to come from that, all right? So I'm going to do a quick screen share here, everyone, because I wanted to show people a couple of resources that we have. This will be fast, by the way. All right, so I'm back in. I'm going to go over to the Treat Lyme book here. All right, so this is the Treat Lyme book. I'm going to go back to our table of contents. I'm going to go to the section called Infection Treatment Plans. I did mention that Babesia takes 5 months, that Bartonella takes 4 to 6 months, which means many of you are wondering what is the best way to treat your Bartonella, okay? So take a look down here. First step in treating Bartonella is follow the successful treatment recipe to boost your immune system, okay? And then I give you 3 different tiers of treatments that you can use, okay? Take a look here. You'll see the ways that I build successful Bartonella treatments, okay? There is also a similar article that I've written about how to kill Babesia. This, again, boost your immune system with a successful treatment recipe, all right? And then there's various combinations of medicines that you can use, and I describe how they work here. All right, let's go back. All right, so John, thank you for that question. And good luck to you. Let's see. Hello, Nina. Let's see. Thank you, Dr. Ross, for your help. You're welcome. My question is, do you think every Lyme protocol should use biofilm busters, and which do you recommend? Thanking you. Oh, boy. You know, so biofilm, when I first started treating Lyme, about 10 years ago now, we didn't really address biofilms that much. I don't think there was many studies that show biofilms were part of Lyme. And people got better without doing anything about biofilm treatment directly, okay? And then we started seeing the work of Dr. Ellen McDonald, and who's a pathologist that was able to see under microscope studies of brain tissues that there were these things called biofilms that covered the germ. And so that brought up the possibility that maybe we should be focusing on biofilms, okay? But based on this research, what I want to let you know is that even though biofilms have been seen as part of Lyme, it doesn't mean that they are found in everybody's Lyme. Okay, there's no study that have been done to look at everybody to say are biofilms there. All right, and also it doesn't mean that they block treatment. As I said, I used to treat people without doing anything to break apart biofilms. Okay. Now, having said that, when Eva Choppy, that her last name is spelled S-A-P-I, Eva Choppy runs one of the more, I guess I would call it one of the more novel or innovative Lyme disease research labs in the country. It's out in New Haven, Connecticut, and she's doing bench science. This isn't done in people. This is done in the laboratory. Okay, I call that bench science, okay? And she's been doing some interesting things. So she did some research about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the research that looked at the Banderol cemento working effectively, also looked at various antibiotics. And basically, she would grow Lyme germs on these modified Petri dishes. They weren't technically Petri dishes. She used a medium substance to help grow Lyme that did a better job than true Petri dishes would, okay? But what she did is she exposed the Lyme germs to various antibiotics and also to the herbs, the Banderol cemento. And what she found is the Banderol cemento used together will get at all 3 forms of the Lyme germ and also removes about 100% of biofilms. She also looked at a prescription antibiotic called tinidazole. And tinidazole gets at about 90 to 95% of biofilm, according to her research on a petri dish, okay? She found, I think doxycycline gets at maybe 70% of biofilm. I think amoxicillin about 70%. Don't hold me accurate on both those, okay? But the antibiotics, the point I'm trying to raise is even the prescription antibiotics can get at biofilm to a degree, which is why maybe a lot of my patients got better without ever doing something specific for biofilms, okay? All right, so I just want to let you know, prescription antibiotic combinations may get at biofilm. So do I always go after biofilm? Not necessarily. If I want to go after biofilm, what do? Well, number one, I can put people on Banderol Cemento. They work 85 to 90% of the time to kill all 3 forms of the Lyme germ, and they seem to remove about 95% of biofilm, okay? So that's one option. Another option is to use build your Lyme disease treatment around the antibiotic tinidazole. So tinidazole treats the microscopic cyst form of Lyme, treats intracellular Lyme, and removes, according to Eva Choppy's experiments, 95% of biofilm, okay? You might want to combine that then with either a Biaxin, a Zithromax, a doxycycline, a minocycline. Those 4 antibiotics I just talked about treat intracellular Lyme and spirochete Lyme. Or you might want to combine it with your IV ceftriaxone. That's the tinidazole. Or you might want to combine tinidazole with high doses of amoxicillin, like 4 pills 4 times a day. That's really high doses. That kind of high dose amoxicillin works as strong as IV antibiotics. All right. If you wonder what I'm talking about here, take a look at the Kills Lyme article that I showed you earlier, where I talk about using amoxicillin as strong as an IV antibiotic, okay? It's an idea I discuss in that Kills Lyme Germs article. Anyhow, tinidazole will remove biofilms, all right? So when do I start thinking that we need to do something specific to deal with biofilms? 6 to 9 months. Remember the Lyme disease guidelines that I was just showing you a bit ago? I said there's some things I'll start looking at in about 6 to 9 months. Biofilms is one of those, all right? So what would I add? Well, Banderol Cemento is a possibility. Might add tinidazole into my treatment in about 6 to 9 months if somebody's not doing better. But the other thing I'll work with are enzymes. I like working with something called lumbrokinase. It's enzymes that come from earthworms. I think of all the potential enzymes you can use, it's the strongest. And what it does is it breaks down something called fibrin. Fibrin is a protein that is found in our blood system. It's used as part of creating blood clots, but biofilms, the bacteria of biofilms bring in fibrin into a biofilm, and it forms the skeleton structure that holds a biofilm together, okay? So if you're looking for these ideas, a little bit more about these ideas and how to treat biofilms, take a look at our Treat Lyme book, and I'm going to show you where you can look right now. All right, so back in the Treat Lyme book here, there's a whole chapter I have on biofilms, okay? Take a look here. We talk about the main article. The lead article in this is this one called Biofilms, Gated Communities. It's a pretty big article talking about what the composition is, talking about the ideas, even that tinidazole, I mentioned it right here, even Otoba bark extract and cast claw Banderol Cemento, I talk about that here. Talk about why I don't think chelating agents like EDTA are really worth much at doing this. Anyhow, take a look. You'll see there's a whole extensive article here, okay? Yeah, all right. So just want to show everyone, because I've mentioned the Treat Lyme book a number of times here tonight. I'm just going to walk you through the table of contents, okay? So there's a whole section about what is Lyme disease, all right? Another one that talks about the things you use to kill. Biofilms is on here. What do you do if you have bladder problems in Lyme? Got a whole chapter devoted to that. What do you do for your brain and nerves? What do you do if you can't think? We give you ideas on what to do for that. What about if you're numb, if you've lost feeling? We give you ideas about to do that. Okay, one of my favorite chapters is what to do if you're not getting better, okay? And we give you a bunch of ideas, including go after biofilms. Section on detoxification, section on what do you do at the end of treatment to prevent relapse, and how do you know if you're done with treatment, okay? Anyhow, take a look here. You're going to see that we have written articles. I've written a lot of articles here about things you can do for most any problem in Lyme. We even have a chapter on what do you do to boost your immune system, okay? So there's a whole section about Immune System 101, the basics, okay? But anyhow, you'll find there's lots of articles here. Take a look. You're going to see that it gives you most of the information you need to help recover from Lyme disease, okay? All right. So let me move on here. Nina, thank you for that. And good luck to you. All right. Let's see. Hello, Randy. Let's see. I followed your protocol for a long time. I've been feeling better for 8 months and stopped taking everything. I thought I was cured. 9 days ago, I started feeling awful again with same symptoms I had 4 years ago. Hoarse voice, fatigue, weak muscles, squeezing in my head. Did Lyme lie dormant? Immune system. Randy, I hope I can find the second part to your question. I found a third part. I think I'm just going to jump to your third part here. Let's see. If I start taking Banderol Cemento again after 8 months off, how much should I start with? What immune system builders do you recommend? How do I find out if I have yeast overgrowth? Is that important to get rid of? Can yeast cause Lyme symptoms? Okay, so let me answer all of this. So Randy, first of all, I'm glad that the successful treatment recipe, our protocol, helped you. It does most people from what we hear, okay? So first of all, when somebody has had Lyme for a year or more, I don't believe, and many of my colleagues don't believe, that we ever get rid of every germ. And I'm sorry to say that, but this is an illness that when we're treating with antibiotics, herbal antibiotics, prescription antibiotics, that basically the best we're doing for most people is we're knocking the germ under control so that the immune system can deal with it and you feel well, okay? But there's always going to be the possibility that you could relapse at some time, all right? So that's one point. However, I find the least, that people have the best chance of not getting into an early relapse if they treat until they're 100% well for 2 months, or they treat till they're at a really good plateau of doing well for at least 4 months, and they make adjustments, try to find ways to go forward with their treatment. And no matter what they do, they can't get better, but they should be at that good place for at least 4 months, okay? So either completely well for 2 months or at a really good place for 4 months, okay? All right, now, when you're done treating, there are things you need to do, though, to boost your immune system to make sure that you keep the germs under control. One of those is get sleep. Right? Make sure you're doing things to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. It's one of the first things that people with Lyme forget to do when they feel better, is you got to get sleep to support the immune system. Number 2, eat organic foods. Do not put poisons in you, okay? Number 3, make sure that you're dealing with those emotional toxins in your environment. And you know what I mean by that, okay? Stress and emotional toxins will hurt your immune system, and your Lyme likely is to come out of remission, all right? Number 4, exercise. Exercise is great at boosting the immune system, okay? But you got to do it to tolerance. Don't do so much that you pay the price for it. Number 5, be on either herbs that boost the immune system, mushrooms that boost the immune system. And the main things I like is a compound that we sell through our store called, made by JHS Naturals, called the Immune Builder 5 Mushroom Formula. It's got 5 different varieties of mushrooms in it that turn on the cell-mediated immunity, the cells that fight infection, okay? All right, and finally, if you are a person that has already relapsed, think about being on Banderol Cemento at lower doses, like maybe 10 or 15 drops twice a day to police the environment, or use a Biaxin or a doxycycline at half normal doses daily to police the environment, okay? Sometimes we need to do that, all right? But am I thinking that this is a Lyme relapse in you? I don't know. There's a good chance, and about 90% of the time that I see somebody that gets worse pretty quickly, it usually means that yeast have moved in. So Randy, how do you figure if you have yeast? Take a look at the article I showed you earlier tonight about how you diagnose yeast. I give you ideas in that article. I didn't show you the whole article. I showed you where it is. But take a look in there. I give you ideas to help figure out if it's too many yeast, okay? And why is too many yeast a problem? Well, as I explained earlier, it kicks up cytokines, and it can look a lot like Lyme, okay? So anyhow, I hope that gives you some insights and some things to think about. I want to show everyone an article that you can look at later here. And this is also for you to look at later too, Randy. All right, so back in the Lyme book here. Okay, so there's, in our table of contents, there's a chapter. Oh, where is it? I think it's called End of Treatment. There it is, End of Treatment. Okay, and talk in here about what do you do at the end of treatment. All right, so this is an article called Finished and How to Prevent Relapse. In this article, I talk about, there's a whole video here, number one, but in this article, talk about how do you know if you're done with treatment, talk about Lyme living on even at the end of treatment. What do you do to prepare for the end of treatment? And one thing is make sure you're doing something to get rid of biofilms before you go into being done. I talk about, is there a test you can do at the end of the treatment? No, we really don't have a done test in Lyme. We don't have a where are we in treatment test, okay? And then I talk about the things you want to do, all right? So take a look here. It's a pretty long article. It's got a good video that goes with it too, all right? And then the other thing I'm just going to tell you all to take a look at, again, I get asked this question about, is there a Lyme done test? There's a whole article I have in here that basically says, no, there's not a Lyme done test, okay? But take a look in here. You'll see why I say that, all right? All right, let me go back here. Okay, so that answers that question. Let me keep moving on. Thanks for that question, Randy. All right, let's see here. Hello, Jen. Let's see. I've had chronic Lyme since 2010, treated with a combo of Buhner herbs and integrative MD recommendations, and have been basically well for almost a year now. Yesterday got a new tick bite. It was on me for less than 10 hours. Should I jump back on herbals or something else? So let me give you my opinion, okay? And my opinion is, as a Lyme doctor that treats the disasters of tick bites that aren't handled correctly to begin with, okay? So when somebody has Lyme, so let me start over again. So regarding Lyme, I think there are many people out there that can live with Lyme infection and never develop Lyme disease, okay? What do I mean by that? Well, I think many people have the ability for their immune systems to keep the Lyme germ when it's in you under control, and it never, immune system keeps it under such good control that you never get ill from it, okay? You feel healthy, all right? And I think there's a lot of people that walk around out there, all right? You're not one of those people. And the reason I can tell you're not one of those people that have an immune system that worked that way is you got Lyme disease, all right? You already had Lyme disease. We know your immune system on its own has a hard time keeping the Lyme under control, all right? So that means if you happen to have gotten another tick bite that gave you Lyme again, your immune system may not be tuned up in a way that will take care of it. So especially when I've got somebody that's had Lyme, they're off of antibiotics, they're off of their herbal antimicrobials, and they get a tick bite, I'm going to put them back on antibiotics, even if they live in an area where there's not a lot of Lyme. I don't want to take a chance, okay? Could you go on a Banderol Cemento? Yeah, you could do that. Do I think that they have the same track record in an acute setting as prescription antibiotics? No. The other thing about Banderol Cemento is they're not going to cover for some of the other co-infections, okay? Banderol Cemento really is just good for Lyme. When that tick bites you again, it could transmit something called anaplasma or Ehrlichia. Those respond to tetracyclines. They could also transfer something called Rocky Mountain spotted fever. It responds to tetracyclines. It could transmit Bartonella or Babesia in an acute situation. They respond to tetracyclines, okay? You kind of get where I'm going here. I would work with a tetracycline in an acute setting. I would use doxycycline or minocycline. If you do doxycycline as an adult, I would do 2 of the 100 milligram pills, 2 pills twice a day for 3 weeks. You could use minocycline as an alternative. That's a 100 milligram pill, 1 pill twice a day for 3 weeks too, okay? Now I want to let you know, I am biased. I see the disasters. I want to do everything I can to prevent those disasters from happening. But also, we already know your immune system compared to other people may not keep your Lyme under control. So I would be very careful and I would use antibiotics in this situation, all right? Good luck to you, Jen. Thank you for that question. All right, so Melissa, I'm going to be running short on time, so I'm just going to tell you. So Melissa asks, this is a controversial one: is Lyme sexually transmitted? My boyfriend was otherwise a healthy 200-pound personal trainer, and after we began dating, he quickly developed all the same symptoms. Okay, so the answer is yes, it can be, but there's more to it than that. I think it's actually a small percentage. And rather than, we only got about 3 minutes left here, I'm going to show you where you can look and get more of the lowdown about sexual transmission. What do you do? How do you prevent it? Should you try to do things to prevent it? Should you get your partner tested? Should you have your partner use condoms? All of those questions I answer in the chapter called Transmission. And what do you do? Can Lyme be sexually transmitted? Yes. I talk about the science, which really isn't good here, but I also answer a lot of questions here like, should I have my healthy partner, sexual partner tested for Lyme disease? And I actually say no, but you'll understand why I say that here, okay? But shouldn't I have my sexual partner tested to prevent him or her from transmitting the germ back to me? I actually say no. Anyhow, take a look. You're going to see this is a controversial area, and I just give you what my opinion is, okay? All right, let me go back here again. All right, so anyhow, Melissa, take a look at that article. Again, you'll find it in the Treat Lyme book, okay? And yes, you might need to subscribe to do it, but you're still going to find the article there. This is a question from Chris. Let's see. What are your thoughts on Alinium, Malarone, Plaquenil, and Bactrim to fight biofilms? I don't think any of them necessarily treat biofilms better than any other antibiotic, okay? Again, I haven't seen any studies that look at Alinium. I haven't seen any that look at Malarone, Plaquenil, and Bactrim. I don't think they've been done, actually, to see if they handle Lyme biofilms. So I don't think anyone can say for sure. The only ones that we can say for sure do anything about biofilms in Lyme would be based on Eva Choppy's experiments. Google her name. You'll see that you can find the research articles that she wrote about treating Lyme and biofilms. Again, her last name is Choppy. That's S-A-P-I. First name is Eva, E-V-A. Okay? So no, I wouldn't necessarily use any of those for biofilms. Take a look, Chris, at the article that I wrote called Biofilms Gated Communities. It really goes over the ones that we have some known science about and the ways that they might work, okay, the recommendations for that, all right? All right, so again, you'll find that in the Treat Lyme book in the Biofilms chapter. Thank you for that question. Let's see, just reading here. Yeah. Actually, I'm out of time tonight. You guys had a lot of questions. We had a big group that showed up tonight. I'm glad that so many of you did show up. For those of you that actually have complex issues, I probably wouldn't be able to do with them here. Realize you can schedule one-on-one visits with me using the one-to-one medical consult. I showed you that earlier on our Lyme disease information site. Again, everyone, tomorrow morning you are going to get an email from me with a link to the recording for tonight's webinar. I should also have in that email tomorrow the link to sign up for the next series of webinars. I am going to take a week off next week, and then I'll be back again to do 3 webinars in the weeks after that, okay? And I think we'll keep doing them still on Wednesday nights. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to change from Wednesday nights yet. I like to do this in the middle of my week. Let's see, the other thing, well, I think that answers most of the questions here. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. Here in a minute, as we're finishing up with the webinar, I'm going to take you all back to the Treat Lyme site, okay? So click on any article there. If you have not yet subscribed, you can subscribe to get all this useful information that we have. The other thing, again, I would remind you that you can find those great supplements we recommend. We've kind of found them we found the ones we think have the best chance of helping you. You can find those at Marty Ross MD and Tara Brook ND supplements. We appreciate any support you can give us. All right. Good night, everyone. Good visiting with you here tonight.